So much has happened since the last game between Tottenham and Liverpool, which has now become infamous for possibly the worst night of officiating since the introduction of VAR, which saw not only one, not only two, but three calamitous errors, which completely ruined the spectacle that we were all promised as football fans, and once again put the spotlight on the referees. But you'd imagine that after an event like that, after a game like that there would be some fallout. And boy, were you right. Right after the game, Liverpool faced a fine immediately of £25,000 for ill discipline, which is basically failing to keep your players on the pitch, which, by the way, were supposed to be on the pitch. But you know, that's football. A way of life that's run by cops who pull you over constantly and find nothing and then plant a bag of Zaza. That's not the only fine that they were facing, because McAllister took to Instagram, specifically on Romero's post congratulating his team on the team spirit, saying it's normal with 12 men. Which is a bit cringe in my opinion. You guys are both professional footballers and he did not have anything to do with what happened. The league has to make a statement still whether or not they will actually fine McAllister, but I would be surprised if they actually go through with it, given how wounded this refereeing association is already, and this would just be pouring more hot water in areas that they don't want hot water, you know what I'm saying. And then right after the breaking news that Liverpool were mulling over some legal action. No one knows what that means. Is it a lawsuit? Is it a means to get clarification? Is it a means to lobby for some change in the regulations of the league and the transparency with which the PGMOL conduct themselves? It's still, as of this point, an empty threat, but most football fans are hoping that eventually that threat will be filled out with some very real actions. But then things became really interesting when Liverpool requested the league to release the audio from the VAR control room to see the circus act that was unfolding in real time when Luis Diaz's goal was disallowed. And if you had any preconceived notions of the level of stupidity that was circulating around the room at that time, well, I promise you, this audio will shock even you in a way that makes you go, my body electric, they shock me. Your body, trust me, electric, they shock will you. What?
And stop. Check complete. Check complete. It's fine. Perfect.
Yeah. Off.
Thank you, mate.
Wait. On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this?
Yeah.
Are you happy with this?
Offside goal. Yeah. That's what it does.
What?
On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this image? Yeah, it's onside. The image we gave is onside.
Left back.
He's played. He's gone offside.
Delay. Ollie's saying to delay. Ollie's saying to delay.
Red throw.
Pardon?
Ollie's calling in to say delay the game. To complete the decision is offside.
Can't do anything.
Ollie's saying to delay.
Ollie?
Yeah.
Delay the game. To delay the game. Stop the game.
They've restarted the
Nothing
game.
from on the field.
Yeah, they've restarted. Yeah.
Can't do anything.
No.
I can't do anything. I can't do anything.
Now, if sporting integrity wasn't on the cards here, I have to say it's really funny just how much they're panicking in their boots, being called upon to make a decision in a very fast-paced environment, of course. But Darren England, who was probably on just a few hours of sleep, being in Dubai a couple days ago, no less, and he, I guess, forgot to confirm exactly what the decision was that should go ahead, because all he said was check complete, looks good. My guy, what looks good? Before they realized that the scoreline doesn't actually reflect what happened, the play was already in the next phase, and therefore they couldn't stop it. And all the meanwhile, you heard one voice of reason.
What?
On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this image? Yeah, it's onside. The image we gave is onside.
That kept telling them that there's been an error, and they could have stopped it. Well, they should have stopped it, because a man by the name of Mo Abbey spoke up when he normally wouldn't. Abbey was a Dutch graduate and advanced systems lead at Hawkeye Innovations, and he popped up with what would have been a useful bit of insight, but Darren England chose to ignore him, probably because it's not exactly his place. But now there might actually be a way for Liverpool to request a replay. The conditions that the game was completed in qualifies them for a replay, but like I said, Liverpool have to actually act on it and request it formally. Well, then what are the rules that apparently satisfy the criteria of a replay? Stephen Taylor Heath, co-head of sports law at JMW Solicitors, said that Rule L18 outlines that the Premier League board has the power to order a league match to be replayed provided that recommendation to that effect has been made by a commission under Rule W51. In addition to this, under Rule W1, the Premier League's board has the power to inquire about any suspected breach of rules, including those made by match officials, while Rule N4 ensures that each match official agrees to be bound by the laws of the game, as well as any protocols and FA rules. There is therefore a possibility that Liverpool could lobby the Premier League board to convene a commission which would have the power, among others, to order a match to be replayed. To mount a general case outside of the Premier League regulations, a starting point would normally have to be to establish a contractual nexus between the club and the officials that has been breached, or a duty of care and negligence causing loss. Now, while this game saw a lot of circumstances that actually satisfies that criteria, that their negligence caused a loss, and the fact that it was a breach of rules by a match official to chalk off a goal for offside unfairly, it's very difficult to actually argue that this decision alone cost them the points, because it's not black and white. A million different things could have happened over the course of the rest of the match that would have resulted in them still dropping points. I think it's the fact that there were multiple calamitous errors and just a genuinely shocking night of football, plus the fact that Liverpool seemed to be acting fast and acting boldly with claims of legal action. However, a lot of things are lining up for Liverpool, but of course the onus is on them to actually pull the trigger. And definitely let me know in the comments if, in a hypothetical world where a Premier League match was to be replayed, are you in the camp that would support this decision, or would you be against it? Would you rather the clubs just suck it up? Personally, I think I would support it simply for the novelty of it and the fact that the game didn't have a chance to be played in a fair environment. But I suppose you can make an even better argument to be against it. The referees, the scumbags that they are, they probably won't even submit to it. And what's more is that due to the mounting pressure on these referees and the rising backlash that we see week after week, all culminating in this kind of historic day. It's a historic day because the PGMOL and the league are finally being taken to task by one of its own. And since then, we've seen the likes of Arteta come out and support, and you're seeing the football fan base at large rallying behind Liverpool's efforts. And the only time we saw a unity like this was during Super League, and we all know how that went. All the institutions were against it as well. I mean, Sky Sports, one of them, but in this matter, they're choosing to actually take a step back. You know, the likes of Gary Neville, he was very vocal in trying to stop the Super League, but in this case, he's decided to take the referee's side. He might have a stake in the matter. He might not be able to actually say what he actually feels, and for contractual reasons, he has to side with one over the other. Now, the other thing that really kind of annoyed me is, I don't care if the game is in the next phase of play, if you saw an error that was negatively impacting the game in a concrete way, you should stop it and go back. Yes, you will get a lot of jeers, you will get a lot of boos, you will get a lot of backlash online that the refereeing committee is incompetent and whatnot, but you guys are used to it. I mean, take that on the chin. You made a bad error, and I think what's better than allowing a game to go on, even though it seems that you didn't react quick enough, in hindsight, it's always better to go back anyway, swallow the bullet, let's bring the play back. And I think in hindsight, the world would have been a much happier place for them, because it definitely wouldn't have led them to the situation that they are in now, facing threats from one of their biggest clubs in the country and being made to essentially pull their pants down in front of the whole world.
He's gone offside.
Like I said in my last video, I don't understand why they purposely put limitations of power and how they can stop the game, when they can stop the game, whose voice is heard when, who has the authority when. It's not a simple task to referee correctly, but it doesn't help when you tie one hand behind your back. No, you can pull it back, and in the end, it would be the right thing to do, even though a lot of people would probably disagree with it. You know, the letter of the law, the rules of the game, tradition, and all that bullshit. Because I feel like we're on the cusp of something. I feel like we're on the cusp of some enforced change, some reflection, especially as other clubs hopefully take Liverpool's lead and request their own transparency in light of future terrible decisions, because there will be future terrible decisions, there's no doubt about it. And the question is, what are you going to do going forward? So is this going to become the norm, that clubs feel emboldened, that they finally take power back into their own hands from a committee that more and more feels like a dictatorship, a committee that, who knows, might go on strike because of this season alone? I mean, not even counting last season or the season before that. I mean, I feel like they've always been under pressure, but at this point it's kind of reaching new heights, how much they're actually detested. And it wouldn't shock me that they would go on strike or, you know, take measures of their own. And then the people like Gary Neville will of course come out and support, because what else do you expect from public figures? They have their sides picked already. It's not about what they actually think, it's about who lines their pockets. The only other way that we can move past this is if the FA or the Premier League decide to disband the PGMOL, because as far as I understand it, the PGMOL is basically a group of friends. It's the referees that we've been seeing for decades in this league. They're all essentially a bunch of friends who look out for each other. Nothing confirmed that more than Mike Dean's interview with Simon Jordan, where he admitted that he felt bad for his friends and he didn't want to send him to the VAR monitor because he didn't want to overrule his decision. I don't understand where this ego trip comes from. I don't understand why there's so much pride in decisions. My guy, if you want to be treated like a human, maybe think of yourself as a human. Yes, you are infallible. And then when everyone piles on you, you're going to claim the "I'm just a human" card. It makes no sense. If you are human, then just accept the fact that you're human and let people make collaborative decisions. There's no reason to have a blanket ruling that the on-field referee is supposed to have the most amount of say, and only if there's a clear and obvious error, which, by the way, what the fuck is a clear and obvious error? How can you pin the backbone of VAR and the regulations that it has to operate under over something subjective? You could argue anything is clear and obvious, because all it really depends on is how much it enrages you personally. If you're extremely upset by a decision, well, then it's clear and obvious to you that that decision should at the very least be looked at. So it's just a whole mess. I don't think they have any real training with these seemingly old-fashioned referees who clearly have not come to grips with how to utilize the technology, how to write the rules for how the technology should actually be used. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did all of this on purpose. And by they, I don't mean the referees, I mean the FA and the Premier League, so that fans would eventually get sick of it, and then we would go back to having no VAR, because that's what fans are doing. They're demanding the scrapping of VAR, which to me, like I said in my last video, is just the most ridiculous thing. You want to scrap the one thing that actually works and go back to catering to this group of clowns just so it's easier for them, rather than, you know, making a statement as fans with banners and with the chatter online and with calling in on radio shows and with really urging the Premier League clubs to rally behind this effort to force the FA or the league to rethink how they approach refereeing in this country. This is not the only way. A referees committee doesn't need to just be made up of people who've only ever refereed in their lives. There are other people who can add a lot to the salon. VAR's application could be entirely rethought. Not only that, but the way in which they produce referees can change. I mean, why is it not a competitive field, competitive line of work that the best of the best rise to the top? Are they not athletes themselves that require fitness and sharpness? But of course, the reason why none of that happens is because the PGMOL has essentially made itself a cult and instilled itself as the ruling authority of officiating in this league. For them to disband or restructure or rethink their entire model and approach to officiating, the pressure has to come from above, and the only way it'll come from above is if the fans make enough noise. And if Premier League clubs find a set of balls, they might have to go and ask Liverpool where they found theirs.